Welcome to 5 Minute Bible, your daily guide for your daily reading. Today's July the 13th, and we'll be looking at 2 Chronicles 27 and Isaiah 9 through 12. Now, last week ended with Amos announcing that Israel was ripe for judgment and exile, and yet David's fallen booth would one day be raised up again. Now, today we continue in that same prophetic timeline with King Uzziah dying and his son Jotham now reigning in Judah. And Jotham is generally faithful, but the people continue acting corruptly under his rule. And at the same time, Assyria continues to rise and Israel continues to weaken. And Judah is entering into a darker season herself. That's why Isaiah 9 through 12 belongs here. Isaiah is interpreting this moment of fear and pride and political darkness by announcing the coming light of the Davidic king. Now, in that way, 2 Chronicles 27 gives us a brief account of Jotham's reign. He does what is right before the Lord. He strengthens Judah, builds and fights successfully, and becomes mighty because he orders his ways before God. But the chapter also adds a sobering note. The people continue acting corruptly. In other words, a relatively faithful king does not automatically produce a faithful people and a faithful nation. Then Isaiah 9 opens with hope. The land of Zebulun and Naphtali, the regions that were first darkened by the invasion, will one day see a great and marvelous light. A child will be born. A son will be given, and the government will rest on his shoulders, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace, and his kingdom will increase without end. But then Isaiah turns back to judgment because Israel is proud, wicked, and unrepentant. The leaders of the northern 10 tribes mislead the people, and oppression spreads, and God's anger is not turned away from them. And at the same time, Isaiah 10 shows that Assyria is God's chosen rod to execute his judgment. The Lord will use Assyria and is growing Assyria in order to discipline his people. But Assyria will also grow arrogant, as though the axe could boast over the one who was wielding it, and therefore God will also judge Assyria in the future. Even so, judgment will not have the last word. A remnant will return. God will cut down the proud forest, but then Isaiah 11 gives this glorious promise that a shoot will spring forth from the stump of Jesse. The Spirit will rest upon him, and he will judge with righteousness and defend the poor and strike down the wicked and bring peace to creation itself. Finally, Isaiah 12 closes with a song of salvation. Because God's anger is turned away, his people draw water joyfully from the springs of salvation, and the Holy One of Israel is great within their midst. So as you read today, I want you to ask the following question. Where should God's people look when darkness grows and earthly kingdoms shake? Isaiah 9 through 12 answers by pointing beyond fear, beyond even the greatest empire of the day, Assyria, and beyond failing kings to the promise God gave to David. And in that way, the central tension is darkness against the backdrop of promised light. Jotham's reign shows some stability, but it's not enough. He's faithful in many ways, and yet the people remain corrupt. And meanwhile, Israel to the north is proud. Assyria is rising, and Judah's future is also very uncertain. So on the one hand, Isaiah doesn't minimize the darkness. He names it with things like pride and wickedness, oppression, corrupt leadership, and the coming judgment of the Lord. And God's people are not allowed to pretend that everything is fine. But on the other hand, Isaiah also announces that God's answer to the darkness is not panic. It's not compromise. It's not even political maneuvering. His answer is a child, a son, and a king. And that gives this passage sharp personal application because when fear grows, you and I are also tempted to look first to our strategies, our alliances, our money, influence, and control. But these things may have their place, but they really can't bear the weight of salvation. In the same way, Isaiah teaches us not to confuse temporary stability with true hope. Jotham is better than many of the kings, but even a good reign can't cure the corruption of his people. Judah need more than a decent king. She needs the Spirit-filled king from Jesse's stump. Now, at the same time, Isaiah 10 warns us not to fear the instrument more than the Lord who wields it. Assyria, of course, is terrifying, but Assyria is still only an axe in the hand of God. The empire doesn't rule history, the Lord does. So the pattern here is that human strength becomes a stump. Proud empires will be cut down, but God is the one who brings life from the things that look like they're dead. Isaiah 9 through 12 in that way points directly to Jesus because he's the child born and the son given. He is the wonderful counselor and mighty God whose wisdom does not fail. He's the one who saves his people, the eternal Father who guards and cares for his kingdom, and he's the Prince of Peace whose reign will know no end. Likewise, he's also the shoot from the stump of Jesse. By the time that Christ comes, David Royal's house looks almost ruined, like a chopped down tree. The glory of Solomon was gone. The kingdom was fractured, fallen, suffered exile, and had come under foreign domination from one empire to the next. And yet, from that very stump, God brings forth the true king. And this also beautifully illustrates from Amos the promise of David's fallen booth would be raised. Isaiah now shows us how, not through national pride or military recovery, but through the coming Son, upon whom the Spirit rests. Christ also fulfills the vision of a righteous judgment. He does not judge by appearances or rule for the powerful or the elite. He defends the poor. He strikes the wicked and establishes peace through righteousness. And finally, Isaiah's song of salvation finds its deepest meaning in him. God's anger is turned away because Christ bears our wrath on the cross. His people draw water from the wells of salvation because Christ pours out his Spirit. The nations rally to the root of Jesse because the risen Christ gathers both Jew and Gentile alike into his kingdom. So in the middle of the rising Assyrian darkness, Isaiah announces God's gospel light. The kingdom will not be saved by Judah's strength, but by the zeal of the Lord through the coming king. So as you read 2 Chronicles 27 and Isaiah 9 through 12, notice how God promises light precisely when the darkness is growing. And tomorrow, the book of Micah will join Isaiah